you got to be aggressive, man.
Yeah.
Like if you want shit to change, you got to make moves. And hopefully, you've seen how I do things here, right? So that was an example of you kind of stepping in your role and saying, all right, this is my gig. I'm gonna optimize our international business, and this looks like a really unique opportunity. You did a bunch of due diligence, and it did not pan out how you wanted it to. And it came to the point where you finally had to Roger up and face the music and to come tell Mal and I. And for anyone that's in that position, the best course of action there is just to man up, come in, say, hey, I fucked this up. I thought it was going to work for XYZ, but we gotta reset this. And that's fine. And obviously we received it totally fine because I understand how dynamic that is. And it's, you know what I mean? There's no crystal ball that can tell you. You can only do so much due diligence, and then you got to take a shot at it. You're listening to the Born Primitive podcast. All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Born Primitive podcast. Really excited about today's episode. I'm here with my co-host and vice president, Tony Strazier. And believe it or not, today's episode is actually going to be about Tony. So this will be an easy one for us. No need to rehearse this one. And what we want to talk about in today's episode is Tony came in a few years ago as just a hourly warehouse employee in a hot, humid warehouse with no air conditioning, and has risen up as we've grown as a company and is now the vice president. And after kind of talking with Tony about this, we realized there's a lot of themes we can extract from your story. And particularly for those listening that, have careers right now, during this podcast, I want to offer some insight as kind of a CEO, someone on the other side of it, some things that I look at, when I look at employees, and hopefully offer some tips on the things you can do at the workplace, to climb that ladder and ascend in your career. And many of these lessons will also apply outside the office. So it won't just be all encompassing to, the professional side. So Tony, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, so let's rewind. Your brother came in. What year was this? It's all blurred to me now.
This would have been 2019. Yeah, 2019. So four and a half years ago is when he probably.
And just to frame it up, some of you probably tuned in already, got the intros on us, but Tony was a Pennsylvania guy, just a hillbilly from Pennsylvania. Whatever your parents did raising you guys, they did something right, because you Straziers are a unique bunch, and and I'll leave it at that. But in a really impressive and incredible way. Then you played Division I baseball at West Virginia, and then you were going to dabble in the strength and conditioning world. Kind of realized it wasn't for you. Kind of found yourself in Virginia Beach without a plan, and the guys were mentioning, hey, maybe you go talk to Born Primitive, and that led your brother to come talk to me. In the old warehouse, the crappy one that we were in, and he came in. I think it was on a Friday, and no one else was in there. And we had just hired. I don't know if you remember this. We had just hired 3 employees. I think we had 5 employees, and we hired like 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah. And
he came in. He obviously spoke highly of you, and he said, "Hey, we don't want any handouts. I just think like if you talk to him, he's a good dude, and he'll work his butt off." Obviously no expectations. And I told him, dude, if you had come in here a week ago, like we literally just hired 3 people. We don't, you know what I mean? Like that's, damn it. Like he should have called me last week. And I kind of deliberated on it. I said, all right, screw it. Bring him in. Let me at least talk to the guy. And then you came into the warehouse, and I don't know, a week later. And I remember, this is how I remember it, at least. I gave you a very brutally honest synopsis of what your job would be. I said, hey man, I don't have a permanent spot for you right now, but I can tell you this, we're a growing company. We're ascending really fast. I can imagine in 6 to 12 months, the dynamic here will be totally different than it is right now. So if you're willing to kind of cut your teeth in the warehouse and, make a not very good hourly wage, and it's going to be hot, and, it's going to be a kind of a thankless job for a while. If you're willing to do that, there might be opportunities that open up, but for now, that's all I can do. And you took it, right? And, kind of, as we say, the rest is history. So I guess from your standpoint, what were you thinking when you went from being this Division I collegiate athlete, with a degree, probably maybe a fun and exciting career in strength and conditioning, which would have probably felt closer to that college, the dynamic of being a collegiate athlete, you're around it, and the strength coaches, like it would be a fun career. And now you're a hourly employee. You're probably what, 25?
I was 23 at the time. 23.
So, you know what I mean? You're probably thinking maybe I'm a bit overqualified for this, right?
Yeah.
I imagine you definitely were. So, what was your frame of mind when things kind of started rolling?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'd been humbled by life a little bit at that point. And let me unpack that. As a college athlete, we were big fish in a small pond growing up, as in like my brother and I, my older brother and I were really good athletes, 3-sport athletes, and my ego had got a little bit inflated. Now, not in some like way that you would have looked at me and been like, man, that kid's so cocky. But I then got to college. So after small town, backwoods, Pennsylvania, kind of crushing every sport we played. And even school was so simple. And we never took books home. Like we didn't study. We still got straight A's. Got to college and playing in the Big 12. It was a different game, a different level. And to be blunt, I was not ready for it. Like even just looking at how we had trained in high school, you'll laugh at this because our strength and conditioning coach, you're doing 8 sets of 12 bench press as a baseball player. And it's like, never in a million years would you ever program that for a kid going to play baseball. But they didn't know what they were doing. Now they could get you strong, but as far as sports specific training, they had no clue what they were doing. So I get to college and to be honest, the wheels started falling off. Both like literally my body was falling apart. I had severe back pain. Was not able to perform, was still so gritty that like I worked my ass off. Like no one would ever say I didn't work hard, but like as far as a skill level and then as far as my body, like living or being able to compete at that level, the wheels started falling off. And I say that all because that's part of the story why when I showed up and sat across from you, there really wasn't any expectation on my end other than like, I will enter any environment and work my ass off because I'm scrambling right now. Like I told you, I had moved to Virginia Beach to get an internship at a pretty high level performance facility that's doing a lot of cool things. And they picked somebody over top me. So even that was just another knock of like, hey, you're not as good as you think you are. And I didn't, once again, it's not like I had an inflated ego, but things had worked out up until like those prior 3 years of my life. So sitting across the table from you, I had been kind of fucked by life a little bit. And I say that almost jokingly that like I was at a point dealing with anxiety of like, who am I? And like, what is my next step? Because it's tough. And especially as a guy, when you're kind of squandering a little bit or you're floating around and things aren't clear and had sports your whole life, that's hard to not know what your next step is. So I can truly say I was thrilled. I was thrilled to have an opportunity because I did have a sense that something special was going on there. And there's like trusting your gut that like, even when I first heard Born Primitive, when I was in Virginia Beach, because at that time you guys were starting to get some traction. People were starting to know who you were. I had poked around on the website, done some research, and it really was like my instincts saying like, there's something here. Now there's a funny story there that you know that somebody had introduced me to Mao, who is the other co-founder and COO. And she flat out said, like, I'm not hiring a guy. No, maybe he can go work at the print shop who's like not affiliated with Born Primitive at all.
What was her reasoning for not hiring a guy?
Well, there was only,
that doesn't get us sued.
There were only female employees at the time in the warehouse, and she thought it would be a distraction to hire a guy.
I wonder why.
Yeah, to hire a guy in the warehouse. So that was even once again another kind of like knock was that like I'd gotten excited that, oh, this company, like maybe there's opportunity for me here. I'd always felt like learning the business world is something that can then translate to so many different environments. So that was enticing to then right away just get shut down and be like, nope, I'll introduce you to the print shop guy. Maybe he'll hire you. It's kind of like, damn. So was serving tables, bartending at some restaurant that I didn't give a shit about when, like you said, my brother sat down with you. So when he said, hey man, he wants to meet with you, there 100% was still the thoughts of like, hey, you're not going to be making a ton of money. This is not going to be glorious. But to me, it was at least something. It was like a life raft that like I'd been looking for, where at least there was something to work towards then. So yeah, that's a moment I think back on a lot because my mentality really was. And then I saw how that played out in the workplace. Like it was, you're gonna make this work because there's something here. So pull at that thread, do whatever you have to do. Like curb your ego, have a high level of humility because there's potential here, and those situations are rare. And now looking back at that, it is strange how, and I don't know if you would agree with this, like the universe at times opens up with an opportunity, but it doesn't seize it for you. You have to take that initiative, and it takes a level of awareness to be able to see. And I even see that play out here now when like something you know is right. Like you know, oh shit, that's an opportunity we should pull at, we should pull the thread at. And having the internal kind of like intuitiveness and also just having that compass to guide you, you learn to say yes to those moments. And then you also learn that, hey, you need to lean in and put a ton of hard work in though to bring that to life.
Yeah, no, it's funny. First point I'll make, it's funny how it's like the ask mom, and if she says no, just ask dad. Sounds like y'all definitely played that card.
Exactly
I probably wouldn't track it at all.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, dude, you got a job, and you better work your butt off. And then I go tell Mal, hey, I tired this Tony guy, and she's like, the same one I said no to.
And she was in France at the time because they were doing the French throwdown.
Yeah, the universal line sometimes, man.
Exactly.
And then she probably gave me crap for that. You didn't run that by me. I can hear it right now. But no, it was cool, man, because you came in and it's interesting to hear that perspective. I haven't heard that before, because from my optic, it was like, all right, Division I athlete, college degree, and like I'm offering him a warehouse position. Like he might have a little bit of entitlement of like, this is above me or below me, sorry. And you didn't project that externally, but I thought in the back of my mind, hey, this might be something this guy isn't that stoked about in the long run. And very quickly was able to see, through your actions that was far from the truth, and that you took it head on. And it was one of those things like, all right, whatever the job is that I'm doing, I'm going to apply myself and work my butt off and make it noticeable through my actions, not by, pounding my chest and saying, look how hard I'm working. It was just, I was able to easily observe that. And I would remember, because that's when we had the gym across the way. And I know we've mentioned this before, but I'd be in there hitting my evening workout, and everyone will have left. And then I'd look across the doors and I'd see you like sweeping the floor at 7:00 at night. And it's like, those are the little things that matter. So if you're an employee and, you're thinking, why aren't you getting recognized by the boss? I would recommend do some self-reflection on what are you doing that's above and beyond the standard, because that's how you're going to climb. Now, not to say you can't have a good career by doing what's asked of you, but if you really want to be aggressive and stand out amongst your peers, you have to be able to do things like that. And that takes humility.
Yeah.
Right. The sweeping the floors analogy, I think that's something that has been instilled in me, in a few different teams that I've been a part of, but most recently in the military. I remember we had a command master chief who was a very accomplished individual in the military world. I'll leave it at that. And I remember on a Friday afternoon when most guys would have gone and, got their weekend, the CMC was out in the hallway pushing a broom. And this dude is like a bad dude that he needs no introduction, and he could absolutely be like, no, somebody else can do that. And he was the only one in the hallway pushing a broom, right? And that was the coolest thing to see that 25 years in, this guy still has that same mentality. So I think humility goes a long way, and you've continued to carry that.
I think, why are you sweeping? That's the big question too, because I can honestly say in those beginning stages, I was not doing it because I wanted to be seen. I was doing it because I knew it was the right thing to do. And like, I cared so much about seizing that opportunity that I was going to do anything that I know needed done, almost to an unhealthy degree, where I was working, and shout out Nicole B, because I feel like she was the same. She's still our director of fulfillment. If there were things to do, I was going to do it. It didn't matter what time it was. It didn't matter if we had to show up on a Saturday, show up on a Sunday, but the why was for the right reasons. If you're sweeping because the CEO is going to be over there lifting, that will get sniffed out eventually. He may think at first like, oh wow, that person's over there sweeping, but over time, they're going to start to pick up on that. Wait, they do that only when people are watching. And then what I can say though is like, and once again, Nicole B was a huge part of this as well, is we were doing it because we hadn't, and I'll speak for myself, not her, but she's a close friend, is I hadn't defined exactly who I was yet. So I had, my ego in that workplace was kind of humbled, and it was like, no, I want to make sure I'm contributing to this environment. And we could go deeper too, that like my dad very much instilled that in us of like, and we grew up in a shit area where like it's you either work at the prison or you're in the prison. That's what everyone says because it's so bad. And so if there's one thing my dad drilled into my brothers and I, it's like, be the hardest worker in the room, but do it for the right reasons. And that is something in those beginning stages. And even now I see as a senior leader is that you can sniff out when people are helping to be seen and just to get the recognition, or the flip of that is you can sense when, hey, this person's doing it for the right reasons because their internal compass is telling them it's the right thing to do. And those are two very different things. And I think that's worth distinguishing. And of course, you want to be seen. You want to get recognition. That's all natural. But if that's the only thing you're trying to do, that's going to get sniffed out eventually.
Totally. And yeah, it will get exposed because it won't align at some point when the actual output is not lining up with like the intangible things you think you're witnessing. So that's totally legit. And I think one thing that to pull out of this is recognizing opportunity. And there's no manual, there's no way it has to be instinctual. And I think I told you, hey man, I'm biased, but I think what's going on here, there's some magic that, you know, as the years play out is going to reveal that. And I think safe to say that was true. And I think you believed in that. And that's why you were willing to take a chance. Yeah. So for people that are in different organizations, try to zoom out and see, you know, the direction of the organization, how big is it, the career ascension, what that looks like. Because it might sound cool to go work for Google or, you know, in a very established like Fortune 500 company, but when there's 5,000 employees and you're a tiny little cog on a really big wheel, the opportunity there might actually be quite less than maybe taking a chance on a startup where you're in the trenches with like 6 or 7 people and you see the vision and you know, all right, if I apply myself, I can ascend to become a vice president in 4 years, where at the other company that would take me 30.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'd be working, you know, wouldn't be fulfilled because it's almost like in established companies, some of it is, it's almost easier because everything has been established. Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's the wild frontier, man. Like there's no SOPs. We're still establishing the business. We don't know what the hell we're doing. You know what I mean? So like you have to be cut out for that uncertainty. And as we've seen, like there's some people that come in that really thrive in that. I don't want to say we have a lack of structure, but there's definitely a little bit of pickup basketball and pivoting and like we got to figure it out on the fly versus like if you go work for Coca-Cola, I would imagine it's like, okay, here's your desk and here's your KPIs and like you do good things and you know what I mean? Like it's just a totally different environment. And I guess knowing, you know, when that opportunity is there and when to really lean into it and say, all right, this is unique and I'm going to go for it and give it a few hard years and then reassess.
Well, and I would be naive if I said part of this wasn't luck, because even looking at my life now with a partner and a 15-month-old and another one on the way in 2 months, I couldn't have done what I did then. So that's a huge part of me looking at that. Like, yes, hard work, yes, humility, yes, resilience, but the timing. And once again, though, it's funny how those things work out. And if you seize opportunities, the timing seems to be there because I didn't have much going on at that time. My brother even was overseas a lot. So I just had a lot of time to really dig in and put all of my effort into this. So it leads back to what you said of whether you're looking to make a career pivot or you're fresh out of college looking to enter the workforce. It's about or defining what type of environment best suits your lifestyle. Because if you have the freedom, it's like, that would be my first recommendation is find and I could give you the exact revenue numbers of a company within this range, because it is a pressure cooker and it's going to suck. And there will be some chaos that you're going to have to navigate, but you're going to build a skill set, what I would say 4 or 5x it would take in the corporate world. Now, if you're 35, you have 3 kids and you're looking to make another pivot, you may want to go the corporate route simply for the fact that things are more defined, your work hours, everything is going to be carved out. So yeah, that's on each individual to kind of recognize and know, because it's not for everyone. And looking back at my trajectory here, it's like, I wouldn't even recommend that to a lot of people. Now, certain people I'd be like, hell yeah, that's exactly what you need because you don't have a skill set. I did not. You have nothing else going on. I did not. And it's like, so dig in, build a skill set so that if nothing else, you're confident in your ability, regardless of what environment you're in. But that happens much quicker at a company like we were, or at the size we were at.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. If you go into a company that's smaller, the advantage you have is you are getting exposed to so many different components of the business, right? So it's like when I was at Red Bull doing marketing for them, really cool, awesome experience, but I had a very narrow lane. Now I got to see other parts of the marketing wheel, digital marketing, athlete marketing, and so I knew enough to be dangerous, but I had a very specific job and I was measured by that. And you know what I mean? I got very good at that, but that was it. Right. Or any other, that applies to anything else. And for you, it's like, all right, we're doing fulfillment, but then you're around everything else. And then before you know it, you're doing like international business. So you're learning how to like import and tariffs and this and that and VAT tax. You're becoming a supply chain. You're becoming subject matter expert on that. And then obviously now you're exposed to everything, so social media, and now you're savvy on digital advertising, which is a huge part of our business. So
finance.
in an established, major company, you would have no clue what's going on in any of those, and you would have a very narrow scope of work and skill set. So if you're leaving that opportunity to go get another one, like you obviously you're still employable, but you're not casting as wide of a net on what you can do. And now, hope you don't leave us, but now you can go out and say, all right, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. Oh, yep, digital advertising, check, got it. You know what I mean? And you become a pretty dangerous and versatile individual. So I think that's another component of it. And I think another theme from this is to hammer home is the instant gratification concept that we see so much. And obviously there's turnover with any company, right? And when we have employees leave, I don't take it personal anymore. I think in the early years when I just didn't know any better, to me it was like, all right, how did I fail them? That the fact they wanted to leave and go somewhere else or pursue another opportunity. And I quickly realized that everyone has different life circumstances. And since people aren't owning the business, it's very hard to create that like die-hard mentality that, all right, it's ride or die here, and we're all in on this. People are in different phases of their life, but I think one thing that was disappointing is I feel like a lot of people weren't patient enough to see the process play out, and they'd be 6 months in and expect like a promotion. And it's like, hey, in the grand scheme of things, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Mal and I didn't even pay each other for the first 5.5 years, right? And I got people that are like 24 years old that are 6 months in, like asking for like a promotion. It's like, all right, what, compared, like you haven't done anything. Yeah. Good job, like keep doing your thing. But the instant gratification and almost entitlement component became very frustrating because I was the opposite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bootstrap this thing, scrappy attitude, be humble, prove yourself, in over a period of time. And that was hard for me because, I'm a bit old school, and I'd have to kind of hold my tongue in those moments so I didn't say my true feelings. But you took the opposite approach. You realized, hey, this is not going to be an overnight thing. But if you apply yourself and you do it the right way, it could turn out into something significant.
Yeah, I think patience is a huge part of that. Like just pure patience of, we get caught up in the day-to-day, and it does relate to instant gratification. We get so caught up in the day-to-day hum that we want things to happen faster than they naturally will unfold. And what I mean by that is you can do something, we've all done it. You do something for 4 months and you now you're talking to everyone about it. You act as if you're a subject matter expert. And it's like, yeah, you've dipped your toes and you can talk about it now. You've spent some time in there, but 4 months after that, usually you'll look back and say like, I was an idiot. So I say that because the patience comes in where to like, hey, let this process unfold. If I think I know, let's wait another couple months because I probably don't know as much as I think I do. And if you let that play out over time, not only does that show senior leadership that like, hey, he's not here just to like, he's not all the time like expecting something else, like that instant gratification. He has the patience to sink in and realize that like, okay, I'm developing a skill set, and if I look at my experience compared to people who've been doing this for a long time, it's completely insignificant. And I kept that in mind the whole time of like, yes, this place is a grinder or a pressure cooker. We're doing so much, we're working a ton, but in the grand scheme of things, I still have very little experience, and I need to keep that in mind because it's easy to start to convince yourself that you know more than you do. And that, once again, that will get sniffed out because people that are seasoned have gone through those different seasons of the business, and they felt the ebb and flow. They felt those times where, yeah, I had it figured out, but then they've got their knees chopped out from underneath them. And you start to learn that like, hey, don't get too excited or too down on anything because this is a bit of a wave and a flow. And I say that because I felt those exact feelings. I remember when I filled in as head of international growth, ooh, I got a new title. I'm out of the warehouse, like
the big dog.
Yeah, I felt my ego start to inflate a little bit. And I realized even on calls with other people, because I had that title now. So I'm on calls with people and I'm realizing I'm talking as if I know anything about this because I have that title, and I'm scared that if they sniff that out, they may think I'm a joke. I remember this and I was like, okay, I have two options. I can keep pretending, or I can have the humility to say, I actually don't know anything about this, and let that humility, although still be confident that you're somebody that can hold a conversation with anyone in any setting, have the humility to ask questions and be curious as opposed to pretend like you know what you're talking about. And that was a conscious decision for me because, as you know, that landscape is tricky. And even now, I spent a lot of time managing the international side and still am involved in it. There's so many layers to international sales and international tax compliance and international import and export that it was a moment that I'll always remember, because as soon as it shifted from pretending to curiosity, everything opened up. And what you know this is that people that have real knowledge, grounded knowledge, and over tens of years or decades, 10 years, 20 years, they love sharing knowledge, but you have to be curious for the right reasons in order for them to share it. So instead of hopping on these calls and trying to talk a good game and well, this is where we're doing this amount of revenue and we want to project here, it's like, I would just get curious about like, hey, what did your experience look like? How did you learn international tax compliance and what steps would you take if you were in my shoes? And instead, all of a sudden, then I'd have an hour-long conversation where I'm taking 2 pages of notes from some guy over in the Netherlands. And it's like, okay, now I know where to go learn more about. But if I hadn't had the humility to say like, hey, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, like, why not get curious instead? I would have handcuffed myself. And I see that play out still with people where it's like, guys, you don't ever need to pretend. Like, yes, it's good to be a subject matter expert, but if you don't know, don't pretend to know unless it's absolute dire need, because that stifles curiosity. And then once again, people that are seasoned, they will sniff that out. And when they sniff that out, it kind of shuts them down to you, because it's similar to like you're sweeping only because the CEO's over there. It's like, hey, you're not doing this for the right reasons anymore. And you're doing this more to inflate your ego than you are to truly learn and develop yourself as a human and as an employee.
Yeah, you can never be too scared to ask questions. There's so many times where, you know, we're doing meetings and stuff, and then there's probably acronyms that get thrown around where it's like, I know what the hell that is. I remember a couple of years ago, we were getting ready to like potentially take on like private equity investments, and I was on one of the calls, and the acronym EBITDA, you know, which is basically, for those who don't know, it's like basically like profit for your business, but just a fancier version. And I was like, wait, what the hell's EBITDA? You know what I mean? And everybody started laughing, and I was like, this dude's like running a very large company.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like a Yale guy, and he doesn't know what EBITDA is. And I kind of laughed like, hey guys, I don't live in this world. So then, you know, it's like, you can't be afraid to, you know, be a little humble and ask those obvious questions. And that's how you learn. Yeah. And honestly, as we know, half the time, so many other people in the room are thinking the same thing.
100%.
You know what I mean? And they're like,
100%.
thank God he asked. Like, we all know how that was.
Yep.
I think I was that guy in school. I was always up in front asking way too many questions in math class. But it's like, you all didn't know that answer anyway, so don't be giving me crap.
Yeah.
I think, you know, one of the things that's been cool to see is you evolve with the changing roles, right? Because you were warehouse, and then were you supply chain for a while?
I started simply in like fulfillment specialist, then went to what Brendan does now, which was like, it would be like inventory control supervisor. Then during COVID was kind of like an interim warehouse manager for a while. Of course, Nicole was still the warehouse manager, but she was pregnant at the time, so was working from home. So as far as like boots on the ground in the warehouse, that I was warehouse manager or interim while there, and then went to the international side of things. That's when I finally came to HQ.
Yeah, and I want to pause there, because we have an incredible environment here at Born Primitive, and the fact that like the employees, there's a work ethic that has been instilled. Everyone that comes in here kind of wired the same. So I don't want to make this sound like the other employees haven't been working their butt off. However, just to put this in context, I want to frame up what I witnessed during the warehouse transition, during COVID, between there's a lot of other people, but the biggest hitters were you and Nicole B, right? From what I remember, this is a few years ago, but Saturday, Sunday, for like, I don't know, 10 weekends in a row, it's 100 degrees out, and you guys were helping this transition to a new warehouse, which ended up being a total shit show for all kinds of different reasons. We don't need to get into that. But it was like, you guys were literally there all Saturday, all Sunday. You'd roll right into the next work week. And Nicole, being the savage she is, I mean, she had like, a couple kids, and like it's just, I don't know how, I don't know when she slept. The kids would get sick, and she'd be up all night, and she'd show up on Monday ready to rock, looking exhausted, but getting it. And like, that was the level of effort it took. It wasn't just an above average effort, and it was an exceptional effort. And, sometimes that's what it takes, man. And of course, you don't want that to be permanent. And I don't want to give the false comfort that, all right, if I just put my head down for a year straight and work my butt off, like great things will happen. I think that theme is true. If you apply yourself, if you be humble and you work your butt off, I think you will be throughout your life constantly improving your fighting position. But there are also going to be times where you might be in an environment where where your work is not getting recognized, right? And maybe particularly bigger companies, whereas like me, a lot of times you are recognized based on how well your manager promotes you to like his or her senior people, right? And if that person sucks and they're not doing what, they're not, sticking up for you in the meetings and highlighting the good work you're doing, down below, one level below, you could actually be working your butt off for 4 years straight and you'll get a single promotion because the person above you isn't doing their job. So there is definitely a time, I think, to pivot out and go seek other opportunities. And I think as an individual, you have to be constantly assessing, what that dynamic is. And one more thing I'll add on the employee side is like, be vocal about where you want to go. You know what I mean? Don't be quiet. Don't be annoying, but be assertive in letting your senior manager know where you want to go in the organization. And if they're not good, go around them. You know what I mean? I'd like to say, don't always jump the chain of command, but there's a time to go into the boss's office and say, hey, I'm not being recognized right now. I want you to know where I'm at right now, where I want to go in this organization. And here's what I'm willing to do. You know what I mean? And take a little bit of risk and do that. And that's happened with me. And it's been awesome of like, hey, right on. Like now I'm tracking where, how you've lined up your compass and, we'll try to make that happen. But, it's definitely now in the back of my mind and something I'll keep note of.
Well, and you should have undeniable proof to support what you're putting in front of your boss or your boss's boss. And what I mean by that is like, have undeniable proof that you can fill into that role, or you can achieve or succeed within that role. Because if not, if you don't have that proof, you're gonna seem delusional, and that's dangerous as well. And it creates kind of a weird environment. If you're a little out of touch with where you want to go, you're going to come across as out of touch. So make sure, like, run that by your manager and even your friends and talk through that situation. Because if you present a good case, it's exactly what you just said. Is like, that gives management like, hey, this person's driven, they know where they're going. And I think that they have the evidence to support that they would do well in that role. Whereas the opposite of that is you're kind of looking, you're looking for that next rung, but you haven't built the skill set yet to get there, and then that comes across a little delusional. So, and that shouldn't scare you from still wanting to get there, but have those sounding boards that you're able to run by where you think you should be, or where you think you should be in the near future. And if you get positive feedback from people you trust who aren't afraid to tell you, hey, you might be a little off. If you get positive feedback, then yeah, that's super important. Is like, be willing to sell yourself, be willing to have those conversations, because a lot of times the people above you, like, it's not that they're not taking the time to think about that, but they have so much going on that it actually makes their lives easier when people are very clear and concise about where they want to go.
We'll put you on the spot.
Yeah.
What's your biggest screw up at Born Primitive?
My biggest screw up so far would be the transition we just did in the UK, I would say. So for the listeners, with international, the struggle always, and I'll try to keep this concise so I don't bore you with a bunch of international jargon.
Yeah, be very careful with that.
Yeah, you'll fall asleep. Is that we've never, you want to look to eventually localize if possible. What I mean by that is your marketing efforts, even social media, like who's working on the account, the verbiage on the website, your paid media. If you can localize the right way, there can be extreme benefits, because now it feels as if you're in that country. Whereas us, we've done international expansions in a way in which a lot still runs through our HQ here at Born Primitive. And in my attempt to kind of see the future of us growing and becoming a truly global brand, I attempted to localize the UK account through a third party who is $1 billion company. And it's not like we got duped. It was not the right arrangement for us. So we did that transition little over a year ago. And once again, that company was great. Like they do what they do, but they had taken over a lot of aspects that we're used to doing in-house. So all of a sudden now, the agility that we have here at Born Primitive was kind of taken out of the equation because we were relying on another party to execute things for us. And it was so slow. And there's where you get into the big corporation. They have thousands of employees. So to get something done, you submit a request and then 2 weeks later it gets done. And then you submit another request for another little thing. So it just, it didn't work both financially and from just a operation standpoint. So now we're kind of pulling that back in. We're de-transitioning out and kind of consolidating to our EU warehouse from the UK. So it was a learning lesson though. And like once again, getting exposure to like, I was talking with their CFO. This is a $1 billion company. Their CFO, some of their ops guys, there was so much professional development in there. Now, hindsight, I still would not have done the transition, but so many learning lessons where it's not a kill shot. It sucks. We lost some money. But the development, even for our now what is our international department, has been so big because it really, and the way forward now, like our 5-year plan internationally is to become very focused and consolidated and not try to localize just because that actually isn't what's right for Born Primitive at this moment. Now, in 5 years, that may be the case, but it was a huge learning lesson too of don't push too hard for an end state. That I still believe that like if we were structured a little different, that would have been the right move. But there were a lot of variables that I do think if I'd have ran them by a couple more people, and you were very supportive, which I always appreciate, like, and you did your due diligence too, and they're real, like, they work with bigger brands. Like, it's not like this was some...
Don't be putting this on.
Hodgepodge company.
Don't be putting this on me.
You approved it. But yeah, that's when I lost sleep over it for a while because it was the first big one where I was like, hey, there's financial implications of this, and your vision didn't pan out how you wanted it to, and I once again realized like, hey, you can try to hide this and kind of like make reasons as to why it didn't work. And I remember sitting with you guys and I told you like, hey guys, you and Mal, this is not trending in the right direction. Here's the reasons why. Here's the general plan of how we could maybe pull out and transition. And that sucked for me. And I remember not wanting to have that conversation because it took a level of like, hey, this is on me for not being able to bring this to life the way I wanted to. But yeah, that was a big one for me.
Yeah, and a couple themes there. One, like you got to be aggressive, man.
Yeah.
Like if you want shit to change, you got to make moves. And hopefully, you've seen how I do things here, right? So that was an example of you kind of stepping in your role and saying, all right, this is my gig. I'm gonna optimize our international business, and this looks like a really unique opportunity. You did a bunch of due diligence, and it did not pan out how you wanted it to. And it came to the point where you finally had to roger up and face the music and to come tell Mal and I. And for anyone that's in that position, the best course of action there is just to man up, come in, say, hey, I fucked this up. I thought it was going to work for XYZ, but we gotta reset this. And that's fine. And obviously we received it totally fine because I understand how dynamic that is. And it's, you know what I mean? There's no crystal ball that can tell you. You can only do so much due diligence, and then you got to take a shot at it. Yeah. Same thing with the shoe, man, right? Yeah. We just did a huge investment into performance footwear. We got Born Primitive Outdoor, Born Primitive Tactical. I mean, these are things, we're getting more horses in the race all the time, and they're big investments, and there is huge risk. But if you just, sit on your hands and you don't make moves and be aggressive, nothing's going to change, right? So don't, obviously, hopefully in the future that does not make you any less aggressive because you know how I roll and how I want you all to be. I'd rather make a mistake by being too aggressive than, 5 years from now be like, oh man, we should have tried that podcast. You know what I mean? It's like, no, we're doing it right now. And if it's 2 years, it's a dud, then all right, all good. We tried it. You know what I mean? We went for it. But that, obviously we learned a ton from that. And, as an American brand, I hate to say it, we have a little bit we have a lot of an advantage because of the effect American culture has on an international community. You know what I mean? If we were a brand from just some random European country to reach the U.S., you would have to have like a whole U.S. team, and you know what I mean? You would have to be marketing in a way that, resonates with American culture. And what we've learned is like people really seek out American culture and American goods and even the American flag. You know what I mean? Yeah. Some of these international partners were like, hey, do you want us to take the American flag like off the sleeve or off the shorts? And they're like, no, definitely keep it. Yeah. And you're kind of like, what? And they're like, no, that's what the people want. So that gives us a little bit of a, scapegoat on not having to have a super localized cultural plan for each country, because just by being an American brand, you do kind of cover it, whether that's right or wrong. That's just how it is. You know what I mean? The effects of Hollywood and American sports and this and that. This is how it goes. So we are in a very good position, being based here, that we can achieve that. Whereas some of the other international companies that are based elsewhere, to try to achieve U.S. success is very, very difficult, because they'd have to be in the trenches. You'd have to have an American team of American people that understand the culture, that replicate the playbook of that company, but do it in an American way.
Yeah, and we CrossFit was a big Trojan horse for us too, to get into those international countries. Like us having such a presence in that space, like that definitely gave us brand recognition in these international countries that would have been, we still could have established for the reasons you just said, but having CrossFit definitely helped get us planted in there, because obviously there's events and people are watching what's happening in the US. And yeah, that was definitely a big needle mover for us as far as those international market entries.
Yeah, and it's such an interconnected community that it kind of blurs across border lines, and that absolutely was the right space to be in the early days. What other takeaways you got, Tone, from this whole experience, and what is if you had a crystal ball, what is the way ahead looking like for you?
Yeah, I think as far as takeaways, it's be people first in all aspects of what you do, and that like sounds like a cliche, but if I look at my time here, like I truly always have felt like it was the people that mattered. Not even, of course, I'd once again be naive to say that my success wasn't on my mind. Of course it was. And like, I was always hoping to grow and expand within this company, but I can honestly say that people were my priority here. And especially once I entered management positions, I want to make sure that I'm providing them the support that they need to achieve success, because that's what was fulfilling to me. A little bit more money, a new title, that shit fades pretty quick. And what you realize is if you can't be in a room with people because you've kind of stepped on them to get to where you're at, like what the hell is it all for then? So I say people first, because what is extremely fulfilling to me now is to see other individuals on a similar track. And we have a lot of examples of that, where they started in customer service and then they get exposed to a specialist position. Now all of a sudden they're a senior manager, and that's not easy. And like I've grown through those different levels, and each level has a unique set of issues. So when you put people first and you empower them to do that same thing, it makes this all make sense. It makes the hard work, the grind, it makes all that make sense, because you see the positive effect it's having on their life. Now, it's not all rainbows and butterflies for them either. And even in those relationships, you're going to have struggles, because as a manager, you're going to have to give shitty feedback at times, and you're going to have to tell them things that they don't want to hear. But if they know your intentions are pure and that you're doing it for the right reasons, you create relationships that make this make sense. Like I said before, it makes the chaos make sense. And to me, when I go home at night and I'm laying in bed and I think to like, hey, this shit is chaotic. There's a lot going on. It's very dynamic. There's always a new problem set that we're trying to figure out, or a new growth avenue that we're trying to take. But I can go to sleep knowing that like every conversation I've had, every interaction I've had with people, that I'm thinking through their lens too, of like, how can I help them succeed? Because it's a bamboo effect, or a boomerang effect. Poof, a boomerang effect, where if you treat other people that way, once again, here comes another cliche, but it's true, is that will rebound back to you at some point. And when you need to lean on them, and as a manager, as a director, as a VP, like you're leaning on people all the time, you can get people to do things for you, and not in some evil way of like, I'm telling everyone what to do, but in a pure like, hey guys, I need help here, or this needs to get done now, or this needs to get done in the next week. People are willing to pony up and do that, because they look at you as a leader that wasn't, you're not a good leader by force, you're a good leader by respect. And those are two very different things. So yeah, put your people first, because it's very easy to get caught up in your own self-interest as you're growing through a business. And even in my role now, it's something I have to even remain more conscious of, because it's you got the cool title, you're in your own office. Well, I have two other people in there, but
with no windows.
Yeah, with no windows. It's kind of a dungeon. Yeah.
Next fall, you'll be living the high life.
Yeah. But But it's easy to lose yourself in that and start to think about yourself and all the responsibilities and all the hardships, not even hardships, but just the daunting tasks in the hard situations personnel wise that you're trying to deal with. But if you lose sight of, hey, this is not only for the business's health, but for each individual's in here, you end up in a tricky spot. So yeah, I would give that advice to anyone is be clear on your personal, like what you want to achieve, but then also be very clear on other people's and make sure you're carving out the time to talk with them about that, because it'll make your journey make more sense if you're helping them along the way.
Yeah. And one little like psychological hack that helped me in military training was if you shift your focus to the well-being of the dudes around you, you know what I mean? You forget about your own misery.
Yeah,
it really works.
100%.
Now, hopefully, like in the work environment, we wouldn't say it would be misery, but if you're stressed out and you feel like you can't surface for air, you know what I mean? It's like if you focus on the people that you manage and you're constantly concerned about their well-being and their career path, it kind of tricks you into not realizing that maybe you're going through some tough times. You know what I mean? So having just a people first approach will solve more problems than one, and just something to keep in mind. And for those that have not done that, try it, because you'll be amazed at how quickly you forget about the own shit that you have going on.
Yeah, and then I think alongside of that's a huge kind of beacon for me to always make sure I'm working towards. But then also humility. Like I genuinely think if there's one value or one trait that embodying is a superpower, it's humility. Because no matter what scenario you find yourself in, it is a kill shot to think you know more than you actually do, like we discussed earlier. And if you approach every situation with curiosity and humility, it really does, it makes you so relatable that I think you will get to solutions, and you will be able to solve problems so much quicker, because you become so much more receptive, and people feel the openness that you carry when you have a high level of humility, that there's no divide between you and others. And it relates actually to the people first stuff too, is that people sense that. They sense if you have a high level of humility, because if you think you have it all figured out, that shuts down people's ability to approach you with things. And as a leader, extremely important that you have the not even you, that others have the avenues in which to call out your blind spots, because we all have them. And like, that can be a lack in skill, that can be a lack of experience. And if you have nobody that's comfortable calling out your blind spots, you're going to get your knees cut out from underneath you. And like the world has its way to quiet you down. And if you don't have other people to kind of be the canary in the coal mine for you, you can end up in a tricky spot sometimes. So humility, I really believe that when people feel like they can connect to you and that they're comfortable bringing you things, that will give you those warning signs way before some significant event has to happen that really humbles you. So yeah, those are the two that I think are very zoomed out, but can go a long way in making you successful in whatever kind of endeavor you find yourself on.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what you're doing, being humble should be in there. You know what I mean? Nobody wants that arrogant dude who just wants everyone to know how cool he is. And all right, I want to put you on the spot. Mm-hmm. So we got 4 new horses in the race. We got Born Primitive. The parent brand already in the race. That's our thoroughbred, right? You know what I mean? That's our lead horse. We got Born Primitive Outdoor. We got Born Primitive Tactical. We got the Savage One training shoe launching September 14th, by the way, depending on when this airs, right? And then this, which is a little bit of a wild card, but we have the Born Primitive podcast, right? Those 4 new horses in the race, looking at a crystal ball, next few years, what do you think has the biggest potential? Putting you on the spot.
Well, this gives us, I'll start with the podcast.
Don't get political on me now. I want a real answer. But
I will.
Yeah,
I will.
All right.
I will. I want to start though with the podcast, because I think, and you and I discussed this when we initially were thinking about bringing this to life alongside Ironclad, is this, people want to relate to the brands and the companies that they're buying things from. They want, gone are the days of this kind of hacky marketing where you can convince people to drink Coca-Cola because you got someone cool on TV holding a Coca-Cola. Like, I truly think as humans, we've been exposed to so much digital media and so much online stuff and TV stuff that like that is dead. Like people want to know now that if they're buying from you, they want to believe in what you're doing. So the podcast, I bring that up because I think this is going to give, and who knows, people may hate our personalities, but if nothing else, this gives something real for people to know who we are. And I don't want to say we speak for all of our employees here, but it gives us an opportunity to connect with people in a way that you can't do through traditional marketing efforts. Now, that's going to be a part of our business plan, of course, but it is evolving, and the digital space is shifting, and now more than ever, you have to have that loyalty. You have to have the people ability to put a face to your company in order for them to continue to purchase from you. I really do believe that. So I see this in best case scenario, the podcast being that exact thing. Is this will take us to a level where people may have heard of Born Primitive, but now they see the guests we have on, they see the conversations between you and I, and hopefully they start putting a face to it of like, hey, these are people and this is a company I really vibe with outside of our values, which we're already, I think that's what's got us to here. And that's, it's an amazing kind of, or a huge pillar of our success are the patriotic, like the giving back to charities, the first responders, being willing to lean into that. But now this gives another layer to really feel like there's a face and there's voices behind Born Primitive. And I think that could be a huge step in kind of us reaching people that we may not have before. So that's kind of the podcast. That's obviously more of a slow play. To answer your question, I see that as when I'm looking at little ripples being able to expand out, that one's huge for me. Like I really think this is an avenue that we needed to get in, not needed, but like that was long overdue, because for the reasons I just mentioned, it gives a more of a personality to the brand. From a purely financial standpoint, I think tactical could be the next big thing, and I think shoes and I think outdoor I see those two kind of simultaneous, where the shoe game now, and I'm just being honest, is a little bit saturated. Now, I would say that's more the running shoe market. So we find ourselves in more of a niche of like a training shoe, a shoe or a true like cross trainer. So there is a little less competition there. But similar to the podcast, I see that more as a long-term thing. We need to build trust. We need to build or let people know that like, hey, we're a real player in this game. And that over time will be kind of its own monster within Born Primitive. And the outdoors like that too. The outdoor, as you know, we've been exposed to that community now, is a very niche community. And we like Western hunting alongside Aaron Snyder, and then just your general outdoor enthusiast as well. You have to build trust within that community as well. Why I think tactical could be the next big one is, and we just discussed it yesterday, the government contracting and stuff behind that. Like there's the ability to get into relationships and get in and start doing some bids or some contracts that make the numbers look a little different at that level. And with our brand ethos, who we are and who you've from day one until now have kind of upheld as our company values, it literally could not correlate better to another space. So if we're able, and I think we already have, if we nail the product and people start to recognize, oh, that's the Born Primitive that has always stood for these things without any wavering, that could make us a player in that game where the numbers start to get you start to add some zeros to the numbers as far as those government contracts and these big bid orders that come in. So yeah, that's kind of that one I think is more immediate. Outdoor shoes a little bit slower, and then same with the podcast. It's less of just a financial like, oh, this is where we're projecting, and more of a slow play of like, hey, let's give this thing life. Let's give it more of a personality, some humility, some vulnerability, so that people can relate to the brand.
Yeah, I think the exciting part about the podcast is it gives us the opportunity to elaborate on the brand values a little bit. It goes way deeper, right, than some 90-second brand anthem we make where we write a script and do a voiceover. Like the typical stuff, yeah. We can go much deeper, and it gives us a longer forum to do that. And I think part of what ultimately made us go over the edge and do this was because, at least from my optic, looking at athletic apparel brands, none of them, I'm kind of confident saying none, I felt reflected the values that I have as a man, right? It was just this watered down kind of typical. I mean, you have like the Nikes of the world, like it's a really cool brand, but like, what do you actually stand for? oh, you stand for banning the flag of the American Revolution, right? You're Nike. You're the biggest athletic apparel brand on the planet, and you're going to ban the flag of the American Revolution as an American brand. Are you kidding me? That's the type of shit that I see that pisses me off. And that's why we've had the ethos we've had from day one. We won't waver from them, because there aren't enough brands that are actually resonating with the everyday American, right? There's nothing wrong with the flag of the American Revolution. There's nothing insensitive about that. And if you think that, you're fucking insane, right? So that's the opportunity. On this podcast, we can get into things like that. No, I don't want to get like too political, because I think people they're sick of politics. So hopefully just be good life shit, good takeaways. But there will be some hard lessons and some hard opinions that, we're going to draw that line in the sand and say, hey, here's who we are. Take it or leave it, right? So that's why I think the podcast is exciting, because I can finally kind of go there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Looking at the shoe, I know you think that's going to maybe be a slow burn, but on the same thread of what I was just saying, there's some unique shit coming in 2024 that will be so born primitive. When people see it, they're going to say, hell yeah, right? So I might have just tipped my hand. If you can connect the dots of what I just said to now as it pertains to shoes, okay? So that's the opportunity. So Tone, I gotta push back. I think the Savage One training shoe, when we put our born primitive spin on it, and obviously the shoe as it is right now is freaking awesome, but when you get into the theme of our brand and what we can do, I think people are going to be, we'll say this, buckle your seatbelt, because 2024, there's a lot of cool things in the works for the Savage One. And then, with Tactical, one of the main motivators for that was not only was the gear we were getting issued in the military not very good, particularly on the clothing side, but what a lot of guys didn't realize is the brands that were issuing this gear did not like tattooed guys who were wearing body armor going overseas, right? And what that stood for. It was like they were happy to take the government contract and make millions of dollars off of us, and what that gear would be used for, just to serve our country. Yet, publicly they're not all about what we do. And it made me so mad that we were, the government was funneling all these money to these companies that didn't even like what we were doing for a living. You know what I mean? Not patriotic at all, actually anti, the opposite. And I'm kind of sitting there getting this issued gear, like, why are we repping these brands? They hate us. They hate everything we stand for. You know what I mean? And the gear sucks. You know what I mean? You can't move in it. The fit is horrible. You know what I mean? So like, as we break down each one of those, there's a backstory and a reason why we got those horses in the race. But it definitely, as this plays out, it'll be really interesting to see. If you're placing your bets, if this is the Kentucky Derby, I'm saying the Born Primitive is 5-2 odds, Tactical 9-1, Shoe 11-1. Podcast a 19-1, but an up and coming thoroughbred that it could shock. You know what I mean? And then what I leave out? Outdoor 16-1. Yeah, those are the odds.
We're somewhat aligned. Yeah. We're
Maybe you
close.
get that trifecta. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What would that be? 200-1.
Yeah.
But no, it's exciting, man. And I just figured to have a little fun, put you on the spot, because obviously,
I like it.
We're every year I tell the employees, a year from now this place is going to look completely different. In the time you're here, has that ever been wrong?
No.
Ever.
Yeah.
They don't believe me. I'm like, just wait a year, guys. Obviously next year we'll be in the new facility, and with all the things that are going on there, and then all these business units that we're standing up, we'll have a little bit of life by then, and we'll be able to step back. And I definitely think I'll definitely have screwed up a few of those. You know what I mean? We'll have to pivot on probably what we thought the vision was going to be. It's not going to go perfect, but it makes us more dynamic as a company, and gives us, raises our chances of being able to be successful as an organization. So,
yeah, and they all make sense together. There's definitely a thread there where I like, as much as it does feel like we spread ourselves thin at times, and we do, admittedly, like it's coming together where not only can you get your fitness gear, but then outdoor, which is another space that's booming now. People are kind of moving back to activities like that, and then obviously the tactical side is near and dear to you, and then we all have training shoes. So they all make sense together.
Any other words of wisdom, Tone, you want to get off your chest before we close her out?
No. Recognize your opportunities, seize it, have a high level of humility in the way you approach it, and know when those opportunities arise, and within that environment. And then, like you said earlier, there will be times to pivot, and there will be times where it's time to move on and go somewhere else. But make sure you've sat in those, and I think sitting in the chaos, or even sitting in a shitty job and still doing it with a high level of integrity, is important, because that builds a kind of willpower in you, that when things are starting to go good, then it's like you're on super juice. Then it's like you've been in the trenches, you've worked through those demons, and both internally and externally, of like holding yourself to that high level of integrity, regardless of what your environment looks like. And your environment's going to ebb and flow, as far as sometimes it's going to be rosy, other times it's going to be a fucking garbage dump. And if you become a beacon that, regardless of what that looks like, either on the far end of the good spectrum or the far end of the shitty spectrum, you build that internal willpower and that resiliency, you're going to become such a valuable asset to any environment you find yourself in, that not only will you never have an issue finding a job, but you will be celebrated for the right reasons by the right people. And to me, that builds a confidence that seeps into every part of your life.
To me, it's really damn simple, man. You hit the nail on the head. Be humble and work your fucking butt off.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that simple. You know what I mean? And recognize that there's going to be a significant period of time where it's going to suck. You know what I mean? And you have to be patient. You have to persevere. And there will be greatness on the other end of that. But as we said, there's too many people that want that instant gratification right off the bat. Nothing in the real world works that way, right? So you know, gear up your mind and know that that's what it takes, and then apply yourself, and good things will happen. And know that, you know, nothing is given; it has to be earned.
And I think there you just sparked something in my head, is like, before all of this stuff on your environment of like finding an opportunity or managing the right way, or even speaking the right way and carrying a level of confidence, it's like, take care of your shit first. And what I mean by that is, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? How are your relationships? How are you moving? Like, if those things aren't squared away, and you're not going to be perfect, there's going to be one that's a little better, one that's a little out of balance. If those things aren't squared away to at least some degree, how can you expect to influence people in a positive way if you're not taking care of yourself? So that's another huge takeaway, is like, yes, if you find your reality not what you want, go internal. And there are times where things need shuffled around in reality, in your external environment. But I have found, and this is just my own personal opinion, 90% of the time there's something out of balance in me. If I'm not getting what I want from reality, it's not, yes, there are situations where reality is not getting you what you want because it's fucked up. But 90% of the time I find it's myself. And when you start to dial those things in, and you find time for rest, you find times to get after it, you're eating the right foods, you're consuming the right media, which is a huge part too. It's like, you find a balance in yourself that then perpetuates through your reality. And that's when opportunities, it's interesting how more opportunities will arise, then the right people you'll start to surround yourself with, and that will change your reality as much as trying to shuffle things around on your external will. So yeah, that's another little rant from me, is turn it personal, point the finger at yourself, refuse to be a victim, and take responsibility for those things that get overlooked at times. Like, and we've talked about it, like, to me, food, what you're drinking, what you're eating is such a huge part of the energy you're going to bring to any environment you're in. And you'll blame 100 fucking things before you finally realize, like, oh, I can't drink 20 beers every night of the weekend, eat hamburgers all night, and then show up at work on Monday with an energy that's going to allow me to influence people in the positive way. So yeah, those things are all contributors, and don't convince yourself otherwise, because then you're always going to be pointing the finger, looking for external things to change without ever looking at the three fingers pointing back at you, realizing that it was tweaks you need to make.
Yeah, it ain't rocket science, man, right? But you are right. You got to get yourself squared away before you can be elite really in anything. Well, cool, Tone. Well, hey, it's cool hearing your story. Well, obviously, I guess talking through your story, I kind of knew it, but really cool to see you ascend here, and obviously I'm excited to see this crazy thing, Born Primitive, how it plays out. And I know you're going to play an integral role in that. And hopefully 5 years from now, we can laugh about this setup. I know we keep looking back at where we were a few years ago. You know, we talked about like the Dominican trip and just how ridiculous that was, like when there was 9 of us. And then we, you know, just the continued ascension that we've have going on here. I think it's going to be a really exciting ride, and so glad to have you a part of it. And just on an admin note, guys, I hope you got something out of that. And like I've said on a few of the other episodes, if you guys could like and subscribe and rate us 5 stars on the different platforms you're watching, that will really help us out on the charts. We have broken into the charts and we're doing really well there, which is really exciting because this was a bit of a leap of faith to do this, and we're having a lot of fun. Additionally, if there are topics you guys want us to cover, we definitely want to do episodes that are just purely Q&A. I don't want any notice of what they're going to be. So Tony's just going to shotgun me with them, and we're going to just, you know, go down rabbit holes. So if there are random topics you want us to cover, please shoot us a DM, and those will get forwarded to us. And, you know, we can't guarantee we'll take every question, but in the future, some of the episodes, that's all we're going to do. And I think that'll be a good change of pace, and we'll have, you know, timestamps in the comments. So if you just want to skip one, you can go right to it. That way, if it's a question that doesn't resonate with you, you don't have to listen through 10 minutes of me ranting about something that you don't want me to talk about. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, guys.